is
I want to get my rook bag back. I mean, I have some sprinkles of rook when I was farming those one. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Hxro Labs Live, episode 76, with a special treat today. We have Dan Gunsberg in the house. How's it going,
What's
Dan?
up? I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, and really excited to have you on today. Less of an interview, just to be clear, guys. Less of an interview, and really more just coming in as traders. I mean, Dan has been trading a hell of a lot longer than I've been an adult. So I think there's a ton of insight we
Boomer
can get
alert.
from this.
Where's the
boomer alert? I'm excited to unpack, the future plans for Hxro. I know you guys have lots of stuff coming up and some perhaps things that not a whole lot of people know about. So we will get into that. But in the earlier part of this, I mean, the market is hot. Altcoins are shifting, and you're not just, sitting behind a desk, planning things about Hxro, running this exchange. I mean, you also trade to some extent as well. You've been trading. When did you start trading? Let's just get a little intro, some background on you as a trader.
Sure. So I actually my first job doing anything with trading was actually I was a market reporter, which is a slightly different meaning to the word reporter at the Chicago Board of Trade. And I was 18 years old. I came home from college. I went down to the Board of Trade. This is kind of a good career story. Somebody that I knew through my family was a trader at the board. And he said, you know what, come down. I'll see if I can get you a job as a runner for the summer. And I went, I was in college at the time and had no money. And got a ticket to come to Chicago, get to Chicago on a Wednesday. I call him, doesn't call me back. Thursday, try him, nothing. This is almost kind of pre-cell phone. Cell phones weren't that hot then. And come to Friday, I was like, fuck this. And I went down to the board knowing nothing. I went down to their to their HR, and they had a book that had jobs in it. And I went and I found something that was probably kind of one step above janitor, and which was, they call it radio. And what radio's job was is to stand in the middle of the trading pit and put, when somebody held a hand signal up that was buy two, two bid on something, and then you saw somebody else across the pit that was at two. Yeah. Or you heard somebody say sold, you knew that a trade was going off, and you literally had to punch it into a computer. And so that was your job. And so I interviewed for it. I got the job, which got me down to the floor. And then I got put into the 5-year treasury note pit. And the nice thing was I got to learn all the hand signals and what everything meant. And and it got me a badge. It got me down there. And I ended up standing next to, or I was in the 5-year treasury note pit, sitting next to a guy that one day who was a arbitrage clerk, and one day he was reading a Golf Digest, and I had played a lot of golf as a grown up, and we started talking about golf. I ended up going out and golfing with him and his broker team. I ended up crushing it. I was on the same team as the lead broker, and he was all fucked up at the end of the round, drunk and happy. And he's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm radio in the 5-year." And he's like, "No, you're going to come work for me as a trade checker now."
There you go.
And which was awesome. So that was a big step up for me. And I spent my summers working for that group. And then when I finished school, I started trading straight away. And my first experience trading was actually standing in the 30-year treasury note pit, which was the biggest octagon jungle you could ever imagine. Locker room, as competitive and crazy as ever. And I think there had been 800 to 1,000 guys in there, and most of them were 6'4" and tight ends. It was crazy. And I'm 6 feet tall, I'm 200 pounds, not a small guy, and it literally was a battle every day. And
body you to get the trade through.
Yeah, and it just so competitive. I had a friend that was brokering a deck of retail orders. And literally, I spent the first couple of months doing nothing but standing there because no one was going to look at me. And he would just be like, "I'll sell you 5," and I'll be like, "I'll sell you 3 back." And he would get long, I would get long, and then I literally would give him the order to get me back out, because I was a fucking pariah in there. Yeah. And eventually, that when I got there, it was right at the time when the Board of Trade had their own internal electronic trading system, which was kind of like the foundational piece of electronic trading and futures. And it was called Project A. And I was spending my days trading in the pit and then nights trading on Project A. And then just from there, the rest is history. I've had a couple of like mega hiccups where I've absolutely gotten rinsed and kind of had to like, hit the reset button a couple of times, once on Project A, and then 9/11 was pretty nasty. But other than that, like that's been, the crux of my career, and been at it officially since like 1998.
Sick. So I wasn't far off. Yeah, I was 11 years old in 1998. Now, okay, and I mean, you're still trading. Obviously, your focus is Hxro and building out the exchange and the products, but I mean, you're still trading. So what I want to get into right now, because I know a lot of people came in here, we want to talk markets. We want to get charts up. Let's switch over to the charts, John, and let's start off, just get into the nitty gritty here on some of these altcoin and Bitcoin and all that stuff. Okay. Because I mean, we were just talking before the show, and we work together in a capacity, and so we don't often talk trading.
Right.
But you're sitting here telling me like, oh man, loaded up on this, loaded up on that. These things are mooning. Like, I want to pick your brain with your experience and how you see the market, because you don't look at charts the same way I do, if at all. I mean, you really just watch for volume, moving averages. You're not as concerned with stop losses. You're more into the swing trading, catching the bigger moves. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, kind of two types of trades stand out for me. One is something about to break out, and the other is kind of catching turns and trends. So effectively like buying dips. Yeah. And it works for me because I'm running Hxro, 18 to 20 hours a day. And so doing that, it's like my attention stays focused there. I don't have to get into these moments where I'm trying to like really overmanage something.
Totally. Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so really what I'm looking for are these like kind of like volume imbalances of like things, kind of how things are flowing. And I'm trying to you start to see like sell-offs over like the last few days, for example. We've sold off, what was it, like 3-4 days in a row. And it's kind of coming into, kind of minor levels. I look at all I honestly look at are 2 moving averages. I don't care. I'll tell people, because it doesn't matter.
No. Make your alpha, man. That's why we're here.
Yeah. I look at a 12-period EMA and a 26-period EMA. Ironically, on Coinbase's chart, those are the 2 EMAs that they use. Mm-hmm. And I look at them from like a 6-hour time frame out to a daily. I look at the weekly and monthly, but not for those trend lines, but just more for just kind of larger reference points. And that's really specific to Bitcoin. Other things, like when I get into doing
switching to chart here, John.
Yeah. So the other thing that when I get into alts, really the way that I look at alts is I look for kind of like tech cycle style peak to valleys. And like, I know I've tweeted about this, but like I'll look for a good project that has, done its initial run up and then has gone through some like valley where generally it's going to be somewhere like 60 to 80%. And it's uncanny in crypto how it almost never fails to do that. Every product, like everything from Hxro out to like YFI, doesn't matter.
Yeah, you like that level, and that's like my reload zone. Like that's what that's my bread and butter as well. And so in that sense, I know we've talked, and you're like, I was watching the stream the other day, and I saw it, and it's like, yep, that's that 80 level. Solana actually went below it here, and kind of consolidated and broke out. But it's a little gross if you.
And really, it's ironic that it works, but it's what got me into Bitcoin also. Like my first trade in Bitcoin was in September of 2015, and Bitcoin had come from, I think it'd come from like 1,200 down to like $150. And I look at that as like optionality. If if the thing has if there's a really like a project has a really good idea and concept, and I kind of think that, well, there's going to be something built around this, or a community built around it, or they're doing enough on the marketing side that like there's news about it, or there's enough people trading it. Like, I will look for that 80% pullback, and I'll just start accumulating. I don't care if it goes to zero, it goes to zero. But like,
Yeah.
and the other thing I do is I never, very rarely, although a couple days ago I did, but like very rarely will I go all in. Like, I always try to keep chips on the table, because
For sure. Yeah.
I'm always trying to like, I have this thing, it's just maybe from 20 plus years of trading, that like, I'd rather have bullets. The worst feeling you can have is being like totally stacked, and the market's like hasn't really done its flush out of the low yet. And it really hasn't kind of had that vacuumous like move. And like, you want to pick up, that's where you want to be getting in there and bidding when it looks like nastiest.
Just
And
yeah.
yeah,
Basically yesterday on Bitcoin.
Exactly. And so like, that was a good example yesterday in Bitcoin, although that not, this is Bitcoin. It's not, Bitcoin had pulled back. It actually had touched right to, I think, that 26 period EMA, and then like came back up. I said to myself, if this thing starts to pull back in and doesn't, and like it's kind of stalling, there's some volume being met there, then I'll go in. And I kind of like around 30,000 just shoved, and maybe I got a little lucky, but
right in the pump chaser zone, man.
Yeah, and
that's
bottom line is like
butter.
and then you like, once you get that, and you kind of get that like that asymmetric mover, everybody's kind of looking left, but then the market's starting to look like set up to look right. That's where you want to kind of start accumulating, and then wait and see. And like, you can take a little profit off the table pretty quickly, and it restacks you for some more bullets. And if things fail, then they fail. Like, the one thing, I mean, Colin, you and I talk about this all the time, like that people are going to probably drop off this stream once they hear it, but I actually don't use stops at all. And I learned that, my experience with stops has been awful, and it's probably because I suck at knowing how to place them. But I also have, I was a COO of a proprietary trading firm for a long time, and understand how like market making algos work, and like, and more alpha driven algos like that market makers use outside of their general market making, which is like, there's, markets have liquidity pockets, and a lot of times stops will sit like stop market orders will sit right above them. And like, when the market's in a consolidation area, or it's starting to turn or something, like the pendulum, that the market naturally just kind of pushes to those edges, kind of auctions lower.
Just the little fuck you candle.
Yeah, to flush out orders that are outside of value, and then you get the bounce back, and then it does the same thing on the upside. And it's kind of how, it's how perps generally work. And when you're in a consolidation period, which is probably 90% of markets, like, it's generally the game. And so you kind of look for those to start adding. You definitely don't want to be selling into those. And like, I'm generally, if I'm trying to get into spots and get into a position that like, I am full on willing to have it go to zero.
Yeah. And I think, I'll step in here and share some insight in that, because obviously I talk about stops all the time. You must manage risk. You got to make sure you can come back and play the game tomorrow. But there are different approaches, different styles, and frankly, just different positions you can be in life. And first of all, you've got to have cash flow if you're going to, you got to, like, part of a trading plan. We talk about this all the time, but big part of a trading plan is establishing who you are, right? What are your liabilities? What are your responsibilities? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have kids? What is your income? How much can you afford to lose? Like, playing, and then you establish that ballpark. And then within it, you can, like you say, you're like, I'll take positions in down markets that are otherwise looking bullish and forward-thinking investments, and I'm just not going to use a stop. I'm just going to place it in there and like go back to doing my job and whatever else, and in that sense, it's a little different than somebody who's, say, sitting in trying to catch something on a 25x long on a cross margin with their whole, wealth in that account.
That to me is a different story, man.
That's
like
different. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
my stop is the fact that like, I don't generally shove every ounce of my net worth into one single trade. Like
Yeah.
I always leave myself bullets. I always think it's going to go against me, always, and not out of lack of confidence, but just like markets are, do fucked up things a lot, and so
yeah. Well, and you're also getting in at those 88.6 pullbacks, so it always just feels gross. I mean, the best trades I've ever made are the most uncomfortable entries I've ever had.
Right, but the euphoria that you feel when it turns and then the market catches up to you and you're like,
in the first few days sitting in it,
this is awesome.
yeah, the uncertainty. And I'll give you an example here. And this is a really timely comment for you about stops and stuff, because I was very patient through this. I saw some dumping. It was like Sunday. I woke up and like, okay, I'm watching football. Saints are on. Yeah, they won. Nice. Beat Chicago. Sorry, bud. And they're moving down. And I just thought, okay, like I'm going to wait because this always goes further than you think. I've got bullish divergence here. I mean, you can see this is the RSI on the 15-minute. I mean, just kept making higher lows and higher lows and higher lows this entire move down. So every time this made a new low, the RSI is like, internally, I'm actually ready to reverse. I'm quite bullish. And so I waited even for this one. And I thought, okay, after this dip here, and then this really strong candle came in, and I just thought, okay, dope. That's my spot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get in here. I'm going to drop my little reload zone. And when it dips into this little zone, I'm going to get long. And I did. And I bought a good chunk, and I, some spot. I took a leverage position. I even added right down to the edge. And I had my stop just below the 78.6, which really, I mean, again, looking back, I'm like, why tighten it so much? Why worry about the stop? Get spot long. And then this low came in, obviously washed my stops. I was like, and we're out. And then I tweeted right after I said, and I know that fucking stop loss is going to mark the bottom. And even because look, again, the RSI made yet another higher low, even on that, which was my stop loss. Now it's not even oversold. And I just knew in my gut, I was like, that was it. That was the bottom.
Dude,
and
I've actually,
I didn't rush back in, but
I've overbought positions and like, I'll go and like, just be prepared to like get out of a small loser just to like try to put in the low.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, here trading gods, here market, like take a couple $1,000 of this and like, just
donate.
That's a tax I'm paying, but like now fucking do your thing.
Yeah. And and I, as soon as I tweeted it too, and I was like, I'm not even kidding. Like I'm just like in my gut, and then it just chilled here for a bit. And I was like, oh, fuck you. And then, but anyways, it comes back up, and then it comes in and makes that higher low again, right off the sweet spot. So I got back into the spot. I was done with my leverage for the day. I had to unplug myself from that, but I got spot long. And then, so, I mean, one thing I want to talk about a little bit today is just the general pullbacks in markets. And for anyone who doesn't already, can follow me at randomtask555 on Twitter. I put out a thread yesterday. It's pinned to my account. And it was just after that happened and those stops hit and all this shit. And I was kind of like, fuck, you're watching your account value go down. Obviously sitting here because everyone I talked to actually sat around on Saturday night thinking about exiting a lot of things. And I believe them. I'm like so many traders I know, they're just like, I was fucking sitting there like, man, this is overbought. This is crazy. Monday's going to dump. But nobody did. And I was right there with them, and so anyways, after the dust settled and after that kind of stuff, I looked back at the last bull market in 2017, and, I better just pull this up because it's a weird without a visual, but basically thesis is that this is a dip and it's generally for buying. And I'll explain why here. But, basically over 2017, we had 7 pullbacks. And they were for no particular reason. I mean, this, January 2017, we hit the all-time high, got pulled back. Then we broke through the all-time high. Then we roasted back down for a few weeks. And so 7 of these types of pullbacks, all in that sort of 29 to 38% range, averaging about 32%. Okay, so here we are. We're in a big rip face bull. I don't think anyone would deny that. I mean, you can look at the chart and say, wow, that's gone up a lot. Holy shit. And then you got to ask, as I zoom in now, because we had down below 20K, we had this nice new bullish market structure coming in. To me, that creates a valid level to draw another fib off as a pivot low. So when I drag this up, this big pullback since really the beginning of this kicked off in earnest, I would say, this was a 382 pullback, pretty standard. You measure it, it's 28%. And to me, that's a great number. Like if it was 16, if it was 20, I'd be like, oh shit, we might have another leg down. But it's right in that sweet spot of around 30%.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be a bull, I don't think we can have that next leg down, at least not by, historical standards with Bitcoin and all that. I think that would be a little more nosebleedy, even well beyond. So it just gave me a level of confidence at that low, despite my little stop out there, just getting my spot long, actually mostly in ETH. But yeah, I mean, just really strong case. Once I cleared that up in my own mind and put that thread together, it just gave me, at the very least, I have a thesis to work from. I've got invalidation levels. And I mean, this was the top. It was the seventh such pullback right here. And eventually, because everyone for the entire bull market, they are taught to buy the dip, you're going to have that sort of counter trend rally if the top is in, typically. Of course, that top came in on bearish divergence and failing volume and all this shit. And that, we haven't seen any of that. We have no other indication that there's weakness in the market other than that 30% pullback, which we now know, if you just read through the thread, if you weren't around then, is absolutely standard. So
I don't think that, maybe this is going to get a little fundamental. I don't think the Bitcoin rally will stop, bottom line, until we go into like a confirmed global rate hike cycle, which I don't see happening. Like, I know that the US Fed has talked quite a bit about, raising rates later this year. And I think it's just pure hawkish rhetoric. And the reality is, like, they're fucking pickled. They don't, like, I just don't think they have an option. And like, once like the dust settles and you get the transition, at least in the US, of like, Biden coming in, and like, it's going to start getting political again, which sucks for everybody, but it's the way it is. And, they're not going to drain the swamp. So I'd be shocked if they did. Let me put it that way. So for me, like, Bitcoin is for buying fucking dips right now, and nothing else. Doesn't mean that, like, when you have parabolas, that you don't want to take some off the table, because you may not see those prices for a while, and it's just going to give you more bullets. But one thing you definitely need to do is you need to get the fuck back in at some point.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, like on the Mnuchin news, I sold out of some of my Bitcoin and some of my ETH positions. But I said to myself, like, I'll give this a couple days, and if they don't follow through to the downside, I'm getting back in. And I actually bought those positions plus some at a net worse price than I got out at. And I didn't care, but because to me, it's like the thesis still holds. Like, we're going to be in a zero rate interest rate environment, or potentially a negative one, and the Fed can talk all they want. And look at, we got this pullback, like, right in line with I think it was Bostic that was talking hawkish. And there's a lot of support around the fact that, because obviously, let's take the US, for example. Like, US interest rate hikes should strengthen the dollar globally, and which will put people back into, dollars and away from things like Bitcoin. But look, bottom line is, like, in the next couple years, I don't see much changing for Bitcoin. I think that is going to cycle through to the rest of the market, into alts and into ETH, and kind of do the same cycles that it always does. And there's going to be a fuck ton of opportunity for people in many different ways to extract some good, potentially generational wealth for many people over the next few years.
I mean, that's what we're here for. Obviously, I think a lot, stacking sats, doing all this, doing that. But the end game is to eventually, I would assume, for most people, pay dollar amounts towards, yourself, your family, your friends, for whatever it is, whether that's a house, whether that's, padding the bank accounts. Like, I know that's so, like, anti-Bitcoin to talk about bank accounts and houses and dollars. But I mean, for myself personally, like, I'm not looking to save up enough Bitcoin to buy a house. I'm looking up to save enough cash to buy a house, as much as you want to say. So, like, when we look at this stuff, I mean, you're sitting there not saying, big bold predictions, this has to happen, but you've basing your trading, you're basing your positioning in the market on a fundamental driver. And then you can work from that, and that gives you a thesis. And that's actually, between all the emotion of the Monday, Sunday dump, and, I think a lot of people probably did pretty well through this. And then, of course, from the top to the 30% down, it's a big hit. I mean, compared to any kind of swings they had through all this. That's the biggest one.
Yep.
And it get really emotional, and it's very hard to see clearly, think clearly, and you just think, well, I didn't cut here, I didn't cut here, I didn't cut here, but I still have an opportunity to cut here. And it's a ridiculous thought, but it is common, and it's probably, it's really why you get these kinds of moves. And I'm with you. I kind of was definitely taking some profit into this parabolic move. I have a habit of doing it early. So a lot of times when I do buy the dip, I'm like getting back in where I basically left. ETH, I think I sold some at 1,000 and goes to 1,300, and then it comes back to 950, and I buy back at like 1,025. Like that's just the nature of some of my own mistakes that I working on. But
it also comes from good entries sometimes. Like sometimes you don't want to let go of them, but like when you have a really good entry and you're like way the fuck on sides really fast,
yeah,
it's really hard for you to like. It's a hard mental thing to hold it, and like it's almost there's so many of these psychological challenges unless you're like purely automated, systematic, that you kind of have to go through, and you're like, okay, I've done this 500 fucking times before, and now I'm gonna finally learn from it.
Yeah.
And unless something changes about the narrative, and full well that, like, I use this saying ad nauseum, but like a market, especially one like where Bitcoin's coming into that stage where it's like you can't just quickly turn an aircraft carrier at port. It takes time to evolve. Mm-hmm. And like, so even if this was the top, you're going to get another opportunity to get some prices in. But like, that's when you have to go look at other things in the market to give you an idea of like, are all signs pointing to this being over? And that's where like you kind of get out of the TA side and start looking at just like the bigger picture of things, which, again, I really
or are any signs pointing to it being over, right? And that was the point of my thread, is that looking at it objectively, because I get it. You see the drawdown in your account, you see the dump, you see huge sales coming in. If you're staring at it for an hour, it feels like a decade, and it's only happening over 2 days, but it feels like a long time. And there is that emotional fear, right? That's like, am I giving everything back? Am I going to do the same thing I did in 2018, 2019 and just lose it all? But look, this was the top in 2017. And I've talked about this quite a bit on the stream because I want it to be embedded in our minds for when we go through this cycle. But even when you get these tops, like you say, you're going to have a chance almost always, because it's not a top until it's a top, and it can't be determined if it's a top until it can't make it.
There's a lower high and then it breaks the low. Right?
Exactly. It can't, so it doesn't, I mean, yes, you get some big, staircase up, elevator down, and it just never like, in retrospect, you look at it like this, you're saying, oh, that's what happened. But if you zoom in, if you get into the time frames that you can trade on in the daily, the 4 hour, there is these tests. And, it's really true for anyone who just wasn't watching like the last three times I mentioned it, but it's true for bottoms too, right? You're going to have that bottom come in, and you just be patient, and it's going to trickle down, and you're going to have the battle in this reload zone almost every time. Yep. When it's like a big market pivot, like you say, that 88.6 level, like that down into those deep retraces. And this is where you can make decisions about, okay, is this the bottom? Is this the top? And through 2019, exact same thing. Is that the top? I don't know.
But tops usually happen with blowoffs, and then like so.
But then you get the dump, and you still get in here.
You have a blow off, and like that blow off should be first of all, like, throwing some stink offers out when things are going really parabolic. Like, look at your level and then go like multiply it like times 1.3 and then like start putting offers in there and go to sleep, and sometimes you get magic, right? But
or just wicks up into some ridiculous
but like and just it doesn't matter the market, man. Like bonds, fucking oil, SPOOs, Bitcoin, like most of these things end in wild, super high volatility parabolic moves. Bottoms curl and take time. Like when I first got long Bitcoin in September 2015, it was like 150, 180, and it was just kind of like making these slower, lower highs. And it's like, okay, and this is the same story around the 80% peak to valley when you're getting into a lot of these things. Like, you want to fucking you want to look at it as asymmetric upside. Like, okay, I'm put dollars behind this, and if it goes lower, I'll put more dollars behind it. And if it goes to zero, I've lost my stack. but I can live with that. But like at these levels, it's a lot less likely to go to zero if you believe in the long-term ideas of it. And that can go for YFI, it can go for Bitcoin, it can go for Hero. It doesn't matter what the, it can be the biggest fucking, it can be Doge, fucking Hex. I don't care. Like, it's just, you have to, that's where you have to decide for yourself, like, is this something that's investable? Because I know I'm getting in at value. And like, is there asymmetric upside in it? Are they doing things? Will the market pick back up on this narrative again? And then like, that gives you can look at it that way as like, I have 1 unit in, which is your entire stack or some of your stack. And like, I should get X amount out of it from this level. But like buying, if you buy something on momentum, like near the high, it's a different story. It's hard. Like you need to be long going into that, because the smart money is getting long the same time that I'm getting long, and or they're not, and they're like, if the smart money is dumping it, then you're kind of fucked. But look at, there's no free lunch, man. That comes with the risk. So
yeah, and I mean, all things being equal, I am in a bit, like, I actually just left disbelief phase, like literally this week, where through all this, I was like, everyone's like, 20K by Christmas. I don't know. That sounds crazy. Like, sure, but I've heard it before for 2 years. And I'm a big bull. I've got probably, over 75, 80% of my net worth. I say net worth like I'm wealthy, but, like 80% of what I have available is in crypto. And even then, I was in disbelief through most of this, where I'm just like, oh, I better take profits because this looks crazy. And then it hits 42K and I'm like, okay, holy shit. But it wasn't until this pullback and that whole zoom out and the thread that I put together, and I thought, okay, I need to get real, because I remember when I joined crypto and it was, $1,800 Bitcoin, whatever it was, and it gets to 35 and it was like insanely high. I mean, that was a massive pump at the time. And it was like, oh, it's never been this high. And I should pull it up on the chart here. But I think I would encourage people who weren't around then, or even if they were, just to go back and review and use the replay tool on TradingView, and just remember that this is relative, right? So at the time, Bitcoin had never traded above these levels when it was trading here. And so when you get the dumps, there was people calling tops. There were people saying, oh, it's been fun. There was no institutional interest at this point, blah, blah, blah. Like, and then it just goes on this insane run.
yeah,
and then when it comes in the top and you're just like, oh, that was it. And there was just no gravity below it. It just kept going and going and going. And so we now have to kind of extrapolate what another cycle looks like. $42,000 Bitcoin is hard to even fathom for me. I'm like, holy shit. Like, you mean all those 0.02, 0.01 losses I took on altcoin trades are now worth, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, like even more. Like, I lost, 0.1 Bitcoin once on a trade. It was like a fairly whatever amount. And now I'm like, shit, that was like,
always remind yourself. I know a guy that
right?
spent like 740 Bitcoin on a very high end Vitamix.
Vitamix, yeah, it's a great.
Because he had the Bitcoin from Bitcoin was at $1. Yeah. So.
Exactly, and so that kind of stuff is starting to happen again with me. I'm like, I think Melker tweeted out the other day. He's like, I still can't get my head around like 0.01 Bitcoin is $100, like it's 10K, and I still do the math that way. And so I guess point is, we need to. I think it's important now for myself, and I've finally gotten to this point now where I can extrapolate that experience of 2017, where it just, it seemed insane at the time. It got to 8K, got to 10K. Everyone's calling tops. I think we have to now expand, extrapolate, I guess is the word, but that into what the next cycle would look like. The fib extension from the highs, the low to the high of that, I mean, it hits something ridiculous. I think it's like 330K. And
that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. It really does. And it's not moon boy stuff. It's not like, hey man, this is going to happen. But objectively speaking, that is why we're here. We're here because there's this theory around, store of wealth, store of value, and reserve currency, all these things. That can't happen even remotely until we're into some pretty crazy levels.
Right.
And so if that's the upside, and I truly believe it is, and I don't think anyone now could deny that it's possible, if not probable, at some point, then why am I selling, in the mid 30s to try to buy back in the mid 20s? When we know, in historically through these markets, these 20 and 30 to 35% pullbacks are just part and parcel of the ride up.
That's Bitcoin volatility for you. And I think one way that I like to look at it is, I'm always like, give it a couple days at this level, and does it suddenly feel cheap? Am I saying to myself like, God, I'd really love to buy 32,000?
Yeah.
And if I'm saying that, like, I know, okay, this is not over. And I've also come to terms with the fact that, like, you know, one Bitcoin is analogous to owning one gold bar, like where everybody owned gold coins, but like to own a gold bar at some point got pretty fucking expensive. And like, not many people own gold bars. Like, institutions own gold bars, and gold bugs own gold bars, but like, and probably some anarchists along the way too. But like, same concept here is that it, like, owning one Bitcoin has got a different taste now. Like, and a lot of that is this, you know, the entrance of large corporations, like what like Saylor's doing, and like the, you know, adding Bitcoin as a hedge against fiat in coming years for corporate balance sheets, like.
And at that point, they may not focus as much on, you know, is it 30, is it 50, is it 90? Because they really are looking 10 years out, and they really are thinking more like, you know, it could go up, it could go down. I don't care. It's just not USD. And that's what it needs to be. It needs to be not the same thing that I have a whole shitload of. It's something else.
That's right. Yeah. It makes a ton of sense. And like, you know, a good gauge I also have is like, just because I have a lot of buddies that are, you know, that run crypto funds, and these are like, you know, 9-10 figure funds, and somebody says to you, like, you go try to buy $10 million of Bitcoin right now and see what kind of liquidity you get and what prices you get.
I did try yesterday, man. The slip
is hard crazy for you, right?
Yeah, it's really tough.
Your wife was like standing behind you with her arms folded.
Yeah. Don't click market. Yeah.
So
no, I feel you. And I mean, I'm even seeing it in the books now when we're up at these levels, like the number of Bitcoin in each like $50 tranche is slim compared to even what I was used to. Maybe
it slides now, and like, and look at like it's building value here. Like, look at your those profiles on the right of your chart. Like, that bell curve, like the mean of that, those bell curves are like getting established at. Oh, is that an old chart actually?
Oh, this is Ethereum. Sorry.
Oh, that's ETH. Okay, well, I mean, look at ETH though. Like, it's building value around. What's the range there? Like,
950 to 1200.
There you go, man.
Like, really, like, you know what's interesting? I mean, I think it's crazy to think that ETH just wouldn't break its all-time high after Bitcoin has like just destroyed its own. But aside from that, I mean, you know, predictions are a dime a dozen. But what I find interesting is that, like you said, we're building a range up here now. We're not even going to get this because it's the perp one. But I was just going to take a look back at. Let's go here. We're building a range now at what was basically like a quick up and down. I mean, I guess, you know, I guess for the number of days spent, we actually probably already did this, but you know, the idea is we're building ranges up here, where otherwise before it was just kind of up and down.
It was in outer space.
Blow off top. Yeah.
Blow off top.
So now we're just hanging out here. Now I'll be the first to say that the network value behind Ethereum is obviously incredible, and you can't deny that, and that's why it's the level it is. It's, you know, everything's built on it. But as a trader, as a user of Ethereum, I got to say it's slow and expensive as shit.
Yes, it is.
And the ETH 2.0 could not come soon enough, and it's not going to come soon enough. And I think that there is a wide open door this year for other blockchains, and not, you know, not like the end of 2017 where there was 200 the next ETH plays coming out, but I mean like real blockchain solutions that are coming along that already have 100+ projects building on them, that are going to have, you know, opportunities to integrate with Ethereum, essentially having the best of Ethereum, but their own low fees and fast throughput, and, you know, equally secure, whatever. So that's actually been my focus this month, beyond the sort of the Polkadot plays.
I think your timing is actually fucking bang on, man. Like, it's going to be the year for you know, for real challengers here. And there's until 2.0 comes out, right? There's just this wide open door, and they know that, and there's going to be a push. But even then, is like 2.0 kind of a, you know, is it a wrapper? What is it? Like, is it a Band-Aid? Like, is it gonna solve those problems in the same way that like Solana could, for example? Like,
that Solana's the one that's been on the front of my list, and I know actually you and Rob have been talking to me about it over the last few months. And in my head, I was always waiting for that big distribution. Nick and I have been talking about this on the stream for a little
Yeah.
while, and it's been like, okay, you know, January 7th is coming along, and when that comes, there's like, you know, 5x the supply will hit the market, which should be a dump, but it was so well known that it really just kind of trended down into that event. And then right around it, you know, there's some people trying to trade it. And I said, like, watch out. Don't put on a big short position into that event, because the whole fucking world knows you're short. And there's bigger players than you who are involved in Solana who know how to go and steal your liquidity and ruin your life. And sure enough, you know, it comes out and it just rocked anyone who was short through that. And
how about that guy that took that?
You know, I've been trading
Sam. Like, that was insane.
Yeah, there's a big bet. I mean, the guy's, you know, Sam's just like literally on Twitter talking about, you know, like, sure, I'll take any bet you like that Solana won't be something by, you know, the end of the year. And everyone's just like, crickets. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Weird bet to take. And you know, against that. And anyway, so I'm pretty fired up about Solana. Let's pull up the chart actually, because this is a nice little segue into some altcoins. I know there's a lot of interest in altcoins space right now, and there should be, because real quick, I mean, Bitcoin dominance. Okay, yeah, you had your party, Bitcoin. You made us think it was maybe risk on. Some positions were taken. They got washed out really high up into the 73, which is really just kind of like an old level that it seems to get to right before breaking down. And now it is kind of on its way down. So obviously we have BTC, the king of the alts. Big breakout on volume after the slow, bleedy downtrend, sweeping these highs, and it's just consolidating below resistance. All those things said, you know, you get big buy volume now. That's people trading Bitcoin, and not like mom and pops, but this is like major volume sliding in from Bitcoin.
Yeah. You and I talked about this. We both flipped right at that, like, that's like that 2300 to 2600 area or something.
Where's that?
Is this ETH to Bitcoin?
Oh no, sorry, right here. Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Divergence that came in on the hourly.
Yeah. That's a good scenario, actually. Like, you had this ETH was just sitting there, kind of like lagging, right? And so much of the demand side of the equation of trading, crypto is like, especially the guys that really have capital to move the markets, they're almost like a mob. And they're like, let's go fucking gangbang Bitcoin and run Bitcoin up. And you got these fast money traders that are like now moving it on a breakout, on a momentum play. And then like ETH is sitting there banging lows on ETH BTC. You have Bitcoin in a parabola. Like, you can't think for a minute that ETH is not going to have some catch-up moment to it.
Yeah.
And so the relative value is so there. And it was also volatility. There was money, there was big money flows going through. And like that was a good sign to, like, you know, get out of some, you may have gotten out of some Bitcoin at that time, like at, you know, 35K or 34K or wherever it was. But you flip that into ETH, you were getting another, you know, 30% on your money.
Yeah, I mean, you're gaining amount of Bitcoin even while perhaps not sitting in it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a monster bottom formation that came in, right? Like you said earlier, like the bottoms come in, they're slow, they're curling. You know, you don't get the quick turnarounds. I mean, this was monstrous. We watched this through the start of July on stream and on our charts. And I mean, this was like a 56-day consolidation below resistance. And so when it breaks out, I'm just thinking, okay, this is going to be a good year for ETH. This is going to be probably just a good cycle for ETH. And then as we dripped back down into this zone, you know, I think it did go a little lower as it usually does. It went a little longer and a little lower than I thought. You know, we came in here, we swept these lows, we bounced. I thought, oh, cool, that's done. Then Bitcoin breaks out, and so we had to deal with that one more time. But when it finally gets into this sweet spot again, I'm always just thinking about the reload zone of any move. And so again, coming up in here, we get back in once again. Now I remember very distinctly, it's one of those stupid things where I'm like, I know where I was sitting. But it was like 1 a.m. on a Saturday, and I'd eaten some gummies, and I was kind of not really trading, right? And I'm sitting here charting. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta get to bed. Ladies in bed waiting, like. And then I set up my risk management and everything. I said, fuck it, I just want to long this. I even moved some Bitcoin into my margin account, and then I just got distracted. I looked at some chats, and I guess it was just like, meh, didn't think it was that important. And like, you know, fuck me, man. That thing woke up to like, because once the cat's out of the bag, it's like, okay, we're putting a pivot in.
That's it.
like you said, it's a mob, and they're just like, that's it. That's a massive.
They're coming for it, and you need to get.
Yeah.
You need to be able to look out into that horizon, willing to accept. Like, I think that the hardest part for so many people is like, you have to be willing to accept risk and understand what is good risk versus bad risk. And good risk is where all signals that you use that work for you, like, are giving you some level of at least instinctual positive expected value. And like, the other part of the psychology, if you're manually trading and you don't have these like hard and fast coded rules that say like this is a positive EV trade, like you need to be able to understand that kind of psychologically, and then also understand that you're in a risk business. There is no fucking free lunch here. Even for like the best market makers, there's no concept of free lunch. There's concept of edge. And like, when you have something good on, you have to be able to accept that risk and like not, and then not be like, well, my stop got me out. And it's like, well, no, dude, it got you out at like a generational level.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
so
that's what this was.
you have no excuse.
Right? I mean, you know, there's a lot of people who FOMO'd into this candle and probably decided, I'm going to risk these lows because I sized up. And then you get your little fuck you. You know, RSI says, nah, internally, I'm actually super bullish. I mean, trust me, dude. I look back at this and I'm like, where did I, you know, and I think, and I talked about this on stream before too. Sometimes I do, like you say, you have to be willing to accept risk. There's definitely a handful of times where I get so bullish on an idea that I start to think about the size I want to take. And then I end up just passing altogether because that risk is beyond obviously what I'm comfortable with. Otherwise, I would just put it on. Right. And so, you know, of course, I think the next day that it's going to be chopping around in the zone, and I'll come back and look at it, and I wake up and, you know, cat's out of the bag. And I really, as much as I want to see this cleaned up from a technical level, like, oh, this should probably get filled in. I'm not anticipating that. I'm not waiting for it. I'm not, you know, I think, you know, very possible we just flag here and take off because, you know, you zoom out and look at the weekly. We just closed this higher high. We're now, actually, this is a down candle here. You can't see because I used the whites on these, but you can see here, like this is a down candle. But you know, I wouldn't put it past it to put in some kind of like inverse head and shoulder type thing where we come and just test that one last time. Maybe Bitcoin's making a high, shit gets boring. But if you zoom out, and this is again one of these things I was putting out on Twitter the other day, like, is this where you want to call tops on Ethereum?
Exactly.
It's like a really weird place to think about tops. And obviously it's versus Bitcoin. So Bitcoin wants to go to 100K. Like, this might be the top for ETH BTC if it can't keep up, blah, blah, blah. But it's a really strange place to be calling the bear on it.
Almost like you got to get out of that habit of like listening to, I'm sure a lot of people listen to Twitter a lot, and like, listening to, find the guys that are talking about the big swing levels that are really good, or like listen to a collective. And when you're getting the right signals from fucking Three Arrows Capital plus this guy plus that guy, and like they're hinting to you that they're seeing things that like are like where it's time. And like it's amazing. Crypto's the only spot. Anywhere else in the world they would be like telling you to, you know, do something at a fucking high because they want to dump on you. You know, and like, this is the only place where it feels like there's a real community behind it that is willing to share. And maybe it's for clout, I don't know, you know, like I definitely go out and share my thoughts, and like I definitely like the feedback when I'm right, and like it feels good. And but
that like, dopamine hit,
but it also comes from the fact that it's really frustrating to see some people out there going like, you know, oh, we're going through this big pullback because we went from 36,000 to 35.2. Like, when you're at 36,000, moving $800 or $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, it's fucking noise. Doesn't matter. And like that, you gotta get away from the guys that are looking at that stuff, unless you're like, you know, unless you're trading super leveraged and that's what you do. And at that point, these become widgets. Like, the longer term charts don't fucking matter. And
I looked down some
trading noise, right? So
and you know, like I loaded up in here, and obviously that makes me more compelled, you know, or inclined to be staring at the chart last night. And you know, when this dump came in, I still remember it was like whatever, it was last night. I was laying in bed and I was like, oh, let's just check Twitter, see what the noise is, because I actually want to see a lot of almost like capitulation-y feelings, like, oh yeah, definitely going down. Because that's going to kind of confirm my idea, which is that this was an effective dump. This was an effective doing its job, which is getting, some of that loose-handed, long leverage money out of the market. And I did, and I pulled up a few feeds, and I won't name names, but I read through this one guy's feed, and it was tweet after tweet after tweet for 10 hours about how it's going to look so obvious in a few weeks when we're way back down at these lower levels, and everyone's going to feel stupid. And I just thought, I mean, pick your sides, do your hustle, do your thing. But like you said, it was like, it's dumping. And it was like a $50 candle after a $900 move. I mean, it's interesting. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. And, I don't tweet a whole lot for those of you guys who do follow me. I'm not an engagement tweeter. I don't go out there and just be like, what do you think Bitcoin's going to do today? Like it. But I will, put together as much of my sort of objective analysis I can, and obviously some nice fiery ideas if I can find them, because like Adam, like, so I mean, again, I've got a small account, but I really try to fill it with less of that scalpy noise, unless it's fib pong, baby, gotta have the fib pong. But trying to catch the swings, because more and more I realize I'd rather be working on other stuff while sitting in positions that are in the right direction than like buy, sell, buy, sell, buy every little thing on the way up, as much as
that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's fun. You get the fibs, you get the fib extensions, you take it. Like I guess one example, maybe we should get into a little bit of Hxro. We're getting near the top of the hour. I know we got a lot of people here in the audience watching, listening. It sounds like for the most part enjoying the content today, which is great. If you guys do like it, feel free to drop a like on us. Hit us in the comments if you want to see anything different, or compliment us on something that you enjoyed, and sub if you haven't already. We appreciate all that stuff, guys. And you can also follow the content that we're putting out on @RealHeroLabs on Twitter. So with that said, Serum is one where I did, potentially overtrade, although it's been going great, so I don't mind. But this thing, I mean, as far as like we talked about Solana earlier, Serum is built on Solana. It is a DEX. It is where you can go to trade, and it's cheap, it's fast, all that stuff. And I think there's a lot of those out there. I was even looking at AirSwap token this morning. There's a bunch. But what's different here is, again, going into Uniswap, the user experience. Every time there's volatility, that's when you want to trade, right? That's when I want to exit a position because it's just gone up, or I want to buy something that just went down. And without fail, during volatility, the fees are over $100 on Ethereum. So, even if somebody has a 10K position, and like, okay, you can arguably get away with a $100 fee if you're buying $10,000 worth of something. But who am I trading against? They're all getting priced out, right? All the little fish, whoever you're trading against, the majority of people, I'd say 70 to 90% of participants, are going to be priced out of Uniswap, or they already are. And so I think, again, this year, opening the door for this kind of stuff. So after the breakout, I did take profit up in here. I did pull the trigger down here, and ultimately I think this thing's going to at least get up in here. And the sick thing is, like, that's a sick gain.
I'm a Serum holder. I'm actually locked up, and I have no qualms about being locked up for 7 years, because I think the narrative.
You're locked up for 7 years? Oh my God, that's a heavy seat. I'm telling you guys, man,
7 years.
Johnny is a shooter. It's just like, we're here for that generational play.
Because look, if Sam was 65 years old, I'd question it, but him being involved with this project, and Jump Trading being involved, both who are partners with Hxro as well. I think he is what crypto will embody in years to come. So it's a bet on, it's a position and bet on what they're building together, which I look at that as something that potentially will one day take on the CME, or the largest of large FX networks, things like that.
A whole other echelon of growth from where we are now.
A trading network, and not just like one DEX. It's the mesh of liquidity, which is a lot of what we'll talk about Hxro, but it's that mesh network of liquidity that really creates the power. And think about the two largest teams that are involved in it are also the two largest market makers in the market. So
yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting. You just kind of shifted my perspective because, I look at this and again, just on the trading level, I'm like, shit, man, if I get long from this breakout level, even just getting up to here, that's over 100%. So if, I buy 1,000 serum here, whatever, I sell 500 of them up here. I now have a free bag of serum that I can lock up for 7 years. I wasn't even thinking that far out, but the nice thing about this trade is it's very conservative. I mean, this is just a range play, right? I mean, that's not even going to new all-time highs. And so, but if I can get into that zone, maybe there's whatever, and then it's whatever, but then I can have that free position because what you're talking about is off the charts.
yeah,
Right?
this look at this is a perfect example. It's done that, like it had its like opening move and then it did its retrace, but now you have an asymmetry there. You have this point where you have the most unbelievable team around it and you have a real project that has vision. The people around it have time. Like they're not in this like mass rush to try to like catch the next rally. I don't give a fuck, man. Like these guys are gonna they're playing a war. Like they're running a long-term fucking ultra marathon here. And like they're looking at a place of like, fine, we'll take on Uniswap now, but I want to take on the New York Stock Exchange one day. And
yeah, and that's an interesting, again, perspective because that's a whole other world that we don't even look at often from crypto.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's jump trading's the largest. Like,
what I still need to wrap my head around
equities than anybody on the planet, and crypto, and like they're heavily behind this. Like,
so like the heaviest algo trader in the world basically is
market maker, algo trader, one of the most
investing.
Yeah, they're a mega portion of the amount of volume that goes through the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in S&Ps every day. Like they have a long-term vision. They're not going to just like show up and like punt and throw their money into something foolishly. Like, no, they're playing a long-term game here. And, the people that are really behind this have that vision. And that's one play for me that has, potential to really be something that will be here on a generational basis.
Sick. Well, I have a funny story. Yesterday, for the first time in a long time, I added an extra 0 onto an order. So I just kind of quick fired off like 1,500 serum. And I was like, cool, put it in my portfolio thing. And then I go on about my day. And I came back later in the day and I looked on Binance. I'm fucking around. I looked at my wallet and I was like, wait a sec. What? And I bought 15,000 of them by accident. Now I'm a responsible trader. So I instantly went and closed the position. It was like 3 cents in profit. I was like, okay, lucky day. I'm not going to be stupid. So I won't sit here and say like I'm omega long on this thing, but I will say this: I wish I bought more now that we just had that conversation, because I was already very bullish. I've been tweeting about it for a while. I've been looking at these levels. I did load back up.
Right? Maybe it'll dip back below $1.50 or.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. What you're talking about is such a long play.
Yeah.
That I don't really worry. I mean, this is a sick level though. Like this consolidation, then that strong breakout, volume pouring in, and then you get the free entry down here at the retest. Like, I had to take it. I mean, that was the day everything's just going crazy. It's just like, just don't look, just pull the trigger, because of course, all you can think is, well, what if Bitcoin goes to 20K? What if ETH goes to 8K, like, or 800? Like, then this is going to get wrecked too. And then I just told, and I even said this to John after the Monday stream. I said, write down that after the stream, you have to text me and remind me to get Serum, because like, I often talk about things on stream and then I get off and we talk about other stuff and I forget. But anyways, so long on this one, I really like the project.
About it too. It simply could go to 0 as well. Like there's no, this is risk. And like,
well, you're 7 years in, so you're going to be riding this for at least 2 cycles. I mean, well, at least 1 cycle, but probably a second one.
There's actually something very serene about knowing that, because it forces you to remove the noise and look at big picture. And
and you have no choice. You're locked in, so you don't even sweat it.
That's right. And so like I'm looking at this like outside of what I have locked up, and like this looks like trading opportunity to me as well. But like on a going back to when it was when it made that move to $4, like probably wouldn't have chased it there.
Yeah.
But like now that it's done, this is the exact cycle, this like tech, this little mini boom bust, higher lows. Like this to me is the type of setup that you want to get after. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it can't go to zero or totally fucking crap out or something happened to it that makes it go to shit. But when I look at this, I see it as being highly asymmetric relative to what exists on the potential horizon for it. And that's where the opportunity is for me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and we do want to always give those sobering disclaimers, right, guys? Like, nothing's financial advice. We're obviously invested in this. I mean, I'm not an investor as much as just trading it from yesterday and last week, but just keeping in mind that there is really no single trade that you should ever just ape into in some ridiculous way. Like, always measure your risk, always have your bottom lines covered, but on the other side of that, now that I've laid that out there, I just want to be clear that in 2017. Alt season was not 2-3x, oh my god, everything's pumping. It was like these crazy, like, fuck you 100x rallies that obviously took weeks to play out. And I can't tell you how excited I am, Dan, to just be like maybe heading into one of those. I don't even think we're gonna, if I had to be a predictor of things, I'd say in the next few weeks, like the kind of alt shit that I'm talking about is like smaller in intra range kind of retracey stuff. And that if we're gonna see something like May 2017, like December 2017, I think it needs a little more time, but that's just my 2 cents. I think
I would use like for that, I kind of use like my my normie friends and see like at what point are they
proxies,
just using it as proxy. Like when my techs start blowing up in this phase, it's more about like, oh well, maybe we're about to take a break, and then when it goes the other way and they're like, should I get out or is this it? And then I'm like, no, probably going to go back higher now. And so,
I decided when it turns from like, should I buy Bitcoin or is it too late to buy Bitcoin texts to what altcoin should I buy texts?
Yeah.
That's when I'm going to start getting, back into cutting some positions. And here's the thing. I want to pull up, what's the one, I was looking at it today. Let's go just AirSwap, because AirSwap's got this beautiful setup right now that's coming in. Put it out on our Twitter today. It's up, it's up 28% today. I can't buy it, but if this confirms, and it may not, it looks like it, it has to get the daily close. And even then I'm looking for that pullback. And that's, same with what we just saw in Serum. Nice big breakout. I was already long, okay, take profit, but really this is where I'm interested, into that reload zone after confirmation. But if you look here, again, AirSwap, like, you've got this chaos level that's kicked up from here. You've got this old support resistance. You've got this big node on the VPVR. I mean, that thing is just begging for action, and that, whenever that comes in, at what point. But that's like, let's measure that. That's like 2x and like 3x. That's 174%. And so the reason I'm going to be taking profits throughout all these rallies is because, if we do something, whatever, like however that's going to look, and I get paid and I'm in a free position and I even have a little extra take home, whatever, then if this turns into what I expect it will, which is a deeper, like longer kind of consolidation until maybe into May and April and June, Q2 tends to be like that alt season window. Then I can load up, like you say, extra bullets.
Yeah.
I get a bullet back in my chamber every time I take profit. And I think a lot of people through these consolidations, they hold through that because they're thinking about the 100x. And then they sell in a sort of depressive sort of rage through here because something else just 10x'd and they want that. And then this thing, they look back a month later and it's finally done the thing. So to avoid that, and as far as trading plans goes, for anyone watching who's just kind of learning and finding their flow, I mean, I would say get good at paying yourself as a rule, not financial advice, but just as a trader, from one trader to another trader, get good at paying yourself, because it pays dividends. And then obviously it gives you options. And also lastly, on that note, I would say move in and out, consider partials. If I go all in here, that's a huge decision. That's a lot of pressure. If I sell everything here, that's a huge decision, ton of pressure. But if I'm just like averaging into things and then I'm averaging out of things, and you just save yourself a lot of stress.
I mean, it's without confusing people, it's like it's almost called like a gamma scalp from like, from options term, like if you're long gamma, if you're basically like long option, like vanilla options, as the market goes in your direction, you get longer and longer gamma. Like you basically you pick up more equivalence of the underlier that you're trading faster as it goes more in your direction. And it basically is like getting you net synthetically longer as it goes in your direction, which is one of the cool things about options. And it creates a synthetic position that you can trade against. And so like if you're buying options in these levels and the options are depressed and they're cheap and the vol's cheap in it, and like you can pick them up, and then I don't think you can really do it on Airswap at this point, but it just holistically, as you start to look at more products in the market, then you're going to end up with these opportunities that will let you effectively, like in this one move, maintain a core position, but you end up with these extra bullets that you can kind of trade out of to add alpha to your P&L.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, just spreading seeds in this kind of a market too, I think, taking profits in things that are overbought and hitting targets and up 2x, and then, buying into some things that are maybe oversold and overextended and showing signs of reversal. I mean, look at these volume bars. I mean, this is what I'm seeing all over the market that makes me excited. Through all this shit, it's very tempting to trade. It's very tempting to take these little pumps and see, buy the retrace and go. But now you've got these signals and they're all over the market right now on BTC pairs. And if they're not on your BTC pair, it's not the one you want. Just let's be honest. Go where the volume is. Go where there is evidence of buyers. Get long with the big boys. That's what I always try to get long, where somebody bigger than me is already long, because then they can protect my level. That kind of thinking has got me just scanning charts for basically range lows, big volume, range lows, big volume. Mm-hmm. And I think the last one I want to share before we get into a couple things about Hxro this year is KNC, because I mean, look, like this, you can't hide that. I mean, you could go OTC, you could go onto some other protocol, but like the buyers that want to swoop in at the very bottom, and I mean, it's so sick. You think, who are these guys that just seem to buy every bottom and sell every top? But here they are. And whoever that is, it is a significant sort of pre-pivot in the market with volume. And you can kind of see it happening on last, like you can find any chart, guys. And, volume starts to kick up here, pretty close to the bottom. Volume starts to kick up here, initial breakout. And then it's just boom. So follow the volume.
Once that thing points up, suddenly the technology is going to become fucking next gen best thing.
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty of it, right? Nobody shells your bag at the bottom, but as soon as if you can get long and just hold through, whatever boredom there is, maybe again,
it's symmetry right there, man. Like that once the price is gonna sometimes lead narrative, and like when the thing was pumping, like everybody and their mother was talking about Kyber is the next great thing, and then like shit, the market thinks it's like a fucking pariah, and like
no one's ever going to use Kyber again.
You got to have one element here to be able to look at it and say, like, is this team onto something? Are they doing something right? Can they establish a presence in the space? And then that's the asymmetry. And then the first move back up, like what you're kind of looking like here, will just be on noise, and it'll hopefully give you the lead. And this is like, there's great risk reward there on the bottom line. So, and if you can take that and then get the move in your favor, then maybe you add to it as you get confirmation. Maybe you take some off and then reload bullets, like while it's still making its mind up, and kind of getting to the point of understanding those elements and those signals is really what kind of, I think, make you next level and start looking at the market more in a kind of maybe like more how a pro would look at, or more of like a slightly different dimension than just like the kind of unidimensional thing of like looking at a chart and is like, is it A or B? Because sometimes you won't fully get the full picture there.
Yeah, well, and that's what I love about getting to do this almost basically full time. I mean, I don't I get to wake up and have coffee, do a little workout, whatever it is, and then just like, okay, let's hit the screens, because you can start to spot these narratives before price drives them. And I love that. And then, there's no better feeling than just coming into a graveyard like this where nobody's talking about something. And then, like you said, you get other guys pumping your bags up here and they're just like, Kyber's the next best thing, I'm going long. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, baby. Yeah. Send it.
Like MTA, like I know everybody had bags of it and got, hurt on it, but like I've started to buy it again just I have a position
Come
on
in at the lows. Yeah.
Yeah, I can sit in longer term with it. Like it might go to zero, it might do jack shit, which would suck. But like I also know if a narrative gets picked up on it and there's some type of technical signals in it, I'm gonna get some multiple out of it. And then the other thing that I do is like I'm looking at you look back through historically and you look at projects that actually are good and meaningful and have good teams behind them, good investors behind them. Like look where it went in the DeFi pump from the summer. Like it went to $11, right?
Yeah.
Like on
1050. Yeah.
what? Purely on momentum here, right?
Yeah. And then the inflation and, the other stuff and just the general bubble pop. But I think based on my limited understanding of it, that there's a pretty decent inflation around staking and rewards and all that stuff.
There is, but I don't fully think that always matters at this point, especially if there's demand for it. And so I'm just trying to get in front of demand on it. And will there be demand? I don't fully know. Do I have an asymmetric upside opportunity? Absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, for what it's worth, this is where Nick and I were like, get the fuck out, because, it just broke this low and it just thought, okay, now we're in negative price discovery. You can save yourself a lot of pain and a lot of money if you want to be a holder. And I should just say, when I want to hold something through a cycle, once I learned TA, and people say, well, TA doesn't work. Well, you just have to make it work for you. And in this case, you get these clear as day signals. You could sell through any of this and it feels like a panic, or you could wait for that bullish retest. A lot of people did clearly or bearish retest, because then they got out here. But then, it's not like, well, you're a bear because you think it's going down. It's like, okay, but now I'm going to have 5x my bag.
Right.
Because I used a basic, very simple concept, support and resistance. And now it's like, oh, look at that. We've got, kind of a low coming in. We got some bullish market structure potentially cooking up. Arguably already did right here. I mean, you've got, I'll just draw this up here. I mean, you've got the W working. You've got the breakout. We've now got the retest. I think you just convinced me to start looking at MTA again. I actually did have a perp long somewhere here. I think I stopped at $1 and then I was like, just moving on. But they might just get a little spot position because, again, coming in at these lows, what's my downside, right? Like, no, I can get out again. We'll go into negative price discovery, or I just long the bottom on some shit that's like 13 mil market cap or whatever it is. So
the other thing you can do, also, this is just kind of maybe like a more of a pro tip is, FTX is such a great resource on so many levels, and if you can look at their perps or anything that has a curve, like actually has futures attached to it, look at the prices out in the future. And if prices are higher out in the future, then you probably can be a little more comfortable being long. Like one thing that was interesting about MTA when it first
I don't have those for this one, but yeah,
is like the long dated futures on it were trading at a meaningful discount, which was a good signal that the people that can really trade this stuff up, like for size, probably didn't have the most bullish look on it at that moment.
Okay, and that's contango, is it not? Am I on something here with contango and backwardization? The idea of like futures basically trading above spot.
Yep.
So you really want to see that. And for those of you guys don't know that term, you can just Google them. I won't bother getting into it here, but again, the idea that somebody who's trading, just say the March future on something, if they're paying a premium for it, that means that they are expecting the price to be higher at that time. So spot might be lagging, and Dan's pointing out that can be a nice little indicator as well.
Right.
Beautiful. Well, look, I really want to talk to you about Hxro. I think that's the elephant in the room right now. What is going on? It's 2021. Obviously last year we saw the rollout of the full version of Moonracked out of beta, and then we went right off into TixWix, get the FTX integration. What's next?
So what's next that is like major for us is we are going through the process of progressively decentralizing Hxro. Yikes.
Let's put John. I just made the face because I know I'm on green screen, but sorry. Let's get back to interview mode here for a bit.
And
okay.
Effectively what that means is like we're going to go through kind of this progressive evolution of taking the light exotics that we've created and more and putting them into a network, and then changing the economics around the Hxro token such that the value accrual of that network will drive back to the token. Very simple.
So you've got eyes on restructuring the entire really tokenomic model behind Hero Token?
I've taken on a little bit more of like, I become a big believer in the value of creating more of a cooperative versus just like focusing on kind of like inequality and shareholder capitalism. I think that we can grow much larger as a network than we can just as a straight up kind of benevolent dictator.
Well, corporation, centralized entity, one office building type business.
And I think the technology that has been created in the space has now opened the door for that. We're going to build our initial core engine on Solana.
Okay.
And it'll initially be a parimutuel protocol. And then we're going to build tooling around it. And we're going to add some of our other products and some products we haven't released yet. And put it in a place where we're going to encourage, the building of a community around it and letting that community participate in the value of the network.
Sounds like you're talking about DeFi a little bit.
A little bit.
Is there a hint in there? Can we eke out any more juice from this one?
It's really it's a progressive decentralization.
So you're taking something that's essentially was out of the box, stay at home, build a business, normal kind of business stuff, and you're now going to apply that crypto decentralization tag to it, and really, like, I'm just trying to like restructure what you said in a way that perhaps you say collective, that essentially means redistributing everything
Of network transaction fee and revenue, and how the network accrues value, and that value accrual will go back to the holders of Hxro.
Dope. Well, I'm excited with that as somebody obviously who holds a little, for the non-US users, for the US users, unfortunately, you guys aren't able to participate right now on Hxro. So just a big heads up. Do you see anything like that changing with this kind of new structure? Is that sort of one of the potential benefits of moving to that system, or is that something you can talk about? Like,
we can't comment on. I mean, we're spending a lot of time on the KYC front, and I'm not a supporter of like no KYC whatsoever. I do think that like I have no interest in being a part of anything that has illicit actors on it.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the way this will be, like, we'll end up unhinging these engines that we're building from Hxro itself, and Hxro network will sit in in its own kind of metasphere.
Separate little, yeah.
It'll be beyond the scope of just us. There'll be community participation and governance around it, everything. But progressively, because we want to make sure that we set it on the right course, that that will give the best experience for the community that evolves, grows around it. And then over time, we want those decisions and things that get built to it to be driven by the community, and we want the community to benefit. So it's, and a lot of what's going to get created through it, we don't want to pretend to know that we have all the answers to, like, when we built MoonRect, it's a parimutuel protocol, and like a parimutuel protocol has functionalities in many different use cases. It could go into sports betting, it could go into insurance. There's so many different ways to really to take advantage of it. We want to encourage builders to come in and become a part of the community and become a part of building it and express their ideas, utilizing the tools and the engines that collectively we'll all create together, and really create a network that has very good liquidity. It incentivizes participation, whether you're a user of the network, whether you're an affiliate that is introducing businesses or users to the network, whether you're participating through, there's going to be obviously a couple of different staking initiatives and yield farming and things like that. And the bottom line is that we have a real product that, like, we're kind of turning it on its head. And we never ICO'd Hxro, we never did any of that stuff. And so we really focused on product first and built the product. And so now we're taking that product and transitioning it to really kind of giving it back to the community to really participate, and hopefully we can continue to create a very robust community around it, and create the right alignment of incentives given depending on how you're participating in it, to earn from it and to be rewarded for your participation in it. And we feel that the timing is perfect, and kind of the people that have frontiered DeFi have created this kind of lab experiment over the last really the last few years, but we've been watching it closely from the sidelines, and because we have a live functioning business, that we have to be really thoughtful about how we do this, and we spent a lot of time doing it, and we're setting up all the structure to do it properly, and ultimately the goal over time is again to drive value from the network back to token holders and to participants.
Excellent. Well, it's a really well packaged description of everything you guys are building over there, and I should say that we're building over here, although labs is a very much separate kind of beast.
Yep.
However, I got one question, and see if you can, I know we're at that 1 hour and a half level, but why Solana in a word or in a paragraph? Why Solana of all the different options you had to build on? What do you see in that one?
Fast, low cost, focused on the elements that when I look at how what real trading engines look like in a centralized world, there's a lot of parallels to it. And some of the things that we're building won't require that speed, but some of the things that we're building to, and some of the ways that we think about participation in the liquidity pools and markets that we build, without a doubt require having, at least at its core, very fast and sustainable and robust transaction speeds. And I don't necessarily believe that Hxro as a network and the participants in it, who build to it and build the UIs that will be that will then face the end users, are that's the distribution layer. We're going to evolve to a place where people aren't going to say I'm getting on this because what is underneath it. That core layer just needs to be sustainable and work, and be right from a cost structure perspective. And honestly, having got there's a big vote of confidence. We've been looking at this for a long time, and having Serum do what they did, and they proved pretty quickly that they could work, and watching how the Solana team and the participants in that network with the Serum team work together was very impressive. And it's been a great experience working with them thus far, and we really think it's the right play for the long haul. And like you said at the beginning, a lot of the banking layers can still exist. Hxro token will still exist as an ERC20, and there's some of the things that have been built in Solana make the transferring from ETH as a banking layer to the actual transaction side super easy, and they're iterating on those to make them even better, and it would be somewhat unnoticeable. And I find Uniswap a nightmare, to be honest.
It's pretty bad. I gotta say it's nice and chill today because we're consolidating, but any break up, any breakdown, and forget about it. Business shuts down.
Yeah, but the reality is that we want to expose the opportunity for the network to we don't want to be maxied out one way or the other, and there's a large community and it's just more the convenience of holding, because it's what people are familiar with. Most people hold stuff on MetaMask or in ETH wallets, over time that's going to change, but we want to be able to have those opportunities open to everybody and kind of get the best of both worlds. And that's the plunge that we're taking. But I am a big believer in the Solana team, the Solana Foundation, and for the needs that we need on our core engines, it's the right initial choice for us.
Beautiful. And going back to what you just said, it sounds like you're going to be able to get the settlement occurring over on Ethereum. In other words, you can not be siloed off. So you'll be interacting with Ethereum, but more on a settlement layer, perhaps a security banking layer, whereas the actual fun stuff, the action, the intensity, the transactional throughput will take place over on Solana.
Correct.
And I really see the future of all this stuff being, this interoperability. I mean, this is the year of ETH 2.0 is, was the end of the year talk. There's going to be, as you say, new iterations, blockchains, other options, things like Polkadot, things like Cosmos coming in, bridging those gaps. And ideally, I think in the next 5 years, through the next cycle, we're going to just be looking back like, remember when blockchains were solo and siloed, and it was just like,
everybody was like,
it's like dial up,
they're fucking the other one, and like it won't work. Like,
yeah,
I'm surprised that hasn't happened sooner. But like, look at what we were able to do with FTX, like Hxro and FTX, and like, most people would have thought a long time ago, like, well, there probably is some level, like, we're obviously, as a company, much smaller and a much smaller, presence than FTX has at this point. But it makes sense to, like, we have benefits, they have benefits. They were able to provide things for us. We're able to provide things that maybe aren't necessarily on their radar, like, and some of the experience that we can provide that they don't, they're not focused on, and the product side, and like, the match just made a ton of sense, right? And
yeah,
we could have easily, Sam and I both could have easily taken a route of saying like, well, no, we're just going to compete with each other, and instead we're like,
yeah, well,
let's do it together and see if, like, we can grow something larger together. And the fact that he was so open to it was such a signal to me that, like, this is where the world's going to move to. And that should be applying in terms of, across different networks in terms of interoperability and whatnot. And I think that, that kind of ethos will continue to compound. And I think, like, the next couple of years are really going to set a stage for it.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And, it's really one of my favorite things about crypto is just people's willingness to work together, collaborate, what otherwise might have been considered competition, where, it may get to that space, right? It may get to that point where it becomes this thing and it evolves, but we're so nascent, we're so young, we're so new that it just makes sense to work together. And it sounds like you've aligned
for it, right? Like just look at what's going on in the world. Like, the stars have aligned in so many ways for our industry, both from a technology perspective, and then a lot of the philosophy around, like, when you start thinking about, like, implementing cooperatives and networks and other ways for people to participate in something through some, like, some level of, like, ownership of something that really nobody owns, and doing that through participation in different ways that can benefit. It creates a really strong, merit-based system on growth, and when you get the right group of people together to make it happen, a lot of cool things happen quick. So
beautiful. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And I got to say, man, we're over the time, but I don't even feel like it's been an hour. So, I mean, I want to get you back on here a little more regularly. Definitely. And, I want to think about it like this interview. I mean, I just want to crush more charts with you, to be honest. I mean, you're an absolute shooter. You're picking up things on range lows when everybody else is like, ha. You're locking in deals for 7 years. I mean, if you guys haven't figured it out yet from watching the stream, we got a lot to learn from you. So I look forward to having you back on soon.
Thanks.
And appreciate your time. Let's fire over to the studio here, John. For those of you in the chat, I know we've been so talk heavy today. We didn't do too much engagement with the chat, but I appreciate everyone. You've been sort of quietly reading along as best I could while listening and interacting here with Dan. So shout out to all of you. We will be back on Friday. I'll be live here at 2 p.m. Eastern and really just unpacking these altcoins. I've got a few other charts that we didn't get to today. I'm going to be firing off as much as I can on our Twitter at Real Hero Labs. Just giving ideas, right? Not buy recommendations, not trade ideas, but like, let's get our eyes together onto the charts that make the most sense, that have the most volume coming in. Because if Bitcoin is going to consolidate in this range for the next week, I really do think we're going to see leg one of what might evolve into something quite special for alts. And like I put out on Twitter this morning, I think if Bitcoin breaks to new highs, that's probably going to mark the end of leg one. And that'll be a great opportunity to be keeping an eye on that and paying ourselves and all that fun stuff. So we'll unpack that a little more in detail on Friday and over Twitter in between. Otherwise, guys, have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us, and always play from a position of strength. Take care.
Thanks, guys.